piece for you guys. He has a wealth of experience too. He's been a Sage partner for many, many years. And I'll record this session for you guys as well. So that way when we're done, I'll send you the recording. So if you need to revisit it, you can as much as you need, prior to making your decision. And then throughout the demo, feel free to ask questions. If there's something you don't quite understand or if you need to see it again, just speak up and let us know because this is your demo. Okay?
Okay.
And Johnnie, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay.
If you have any questions prior to getting started, feel free. There you
You
go.
need to give me permission.
I did. Oh, and I do have a brief agenda too. So some of what we'll cover, Johnnie usually starts out with the overview of Sage 100, what it looks like and how to navigate around it. And then we'll go ahead and touch on, APR, AR, GL, customer setup and maintenance, security permissions. One of the sticking points that you had was that purchase order and having, different ship dates per line item. We'll cover that. Inventory setup and tracking, and then production management, and then we'll finish up with reporting. Okay? And I think I made you. There you go.
So you should see. Can you guys confirm that you see my information center almost in the center, not quite, but a blue box with information center? Are you guys seeing that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what we're looking at is Sage 100. I've already logged in with a username and password. We call this the business desktop. So what I'm going to start with is just how Sage 100 is laid out, how you can navigate it. Now, before I dig into this, one of the first things I want to do is I want to kind of show you if this looks kind of small to you. I have my glasses on. It still looks kind of small to me. User can go to this menu. So this is something each user has the ability to do. Don't have to go get an admin. They can just go to the view menu, and you have this application scaling option. So you'll notice I have, if I thought this was too big, I could actually make it smaller, which is not the direction I wanted to go. But I can actually change this to large, which is the direction I wanted to go. So you notice all the fonts for all the menus got a bit bigger. And anything I do as far as opening up a window, inquiry, maintenance, data entry will be reflected in the scaling that I choose there. So if it doesn't look quite big enough, you're having trouble reading it, you'd like it to be a little bigger, you can go to the view menu, go to application scaling to see if you have essentially a larger option for the scaling available. So each user can do that independently of each other. You are only affecting yourself and you're setting your preference for that view. Now, other things I can do here, you'll notice this is not alphabetical, but if you prefer those to be alphabetical, the modules themselves, all you got to do is say sort, and then those will be sorted alphabetically. The menus can be sorted alphabetically, and then even the things underneath the menus can be sorted alphabetically as well. So if it's just easier for you to find things that way, you can just go ahead and turn on that sorting. I'm going to turn it off because I'm kind of used to things being where they're supposed to be in my mind, I guess. And then other things you can do here is these little themes. This just gives you different color combinations. So again, that goes to your preference and maybe, what is easier for you to look at for long periods of time while you're working. It just may be easier to have certain combinations of colors. So you can kind of come in and go, pick the one that works best for you. And again, without having to go get an admin to come in and change that for you, you can independently, decide how big you want that. Now, other things I can do here, you'll notice, for example, I'm going to go to AR as an example. You'll see AR, and then I have the module menus. This structure that you see here, main reports period end, that's consistent throughout. So you're going to have that same structure in GL, inventory, purchase order. So you're going to see that same menu structure. You may see additions to what you see here. So for example, if I drop into inventory has some functionality that's not needed in AR. So in addition to the main and reports, you also get physical counting kits. If I drop into accounts payable, again, there's unique functionality here, check printing, electronic payment, prenup printing. I only need that here. So you will find places, again, where there's unique menus that don't exist anywhere else. But if you're an AP clerk, okay, check printing's a part of the job. I got to pay those bills. So shouldn't be a surprise. Now, throughout the system, too, another thing, main menu. Main is always going to have specific types of things. You'll always find maintenance inquiry and data entry tasks for the module under the main menu. So if you are doing data entry, maintenance, or inquiry as a part of your job across modules, you won't have to kind of guess, well, where do I do this in AR versus AP versus inventory? It's always going to be under the main folder. And to make that even easier, you may be using, let's say, one or two things from each module. And you don't always have to go from AP main to AR main to inventory. If you find that you're using a particular thing frequently, you can flag it as a favorite. So, for example, let's say that there's a particular report. So let's say this monthly purchase report, I find that I run it so frequently that I want to make it easier to get to. All I have to do is right-click, and with that right-click, you'll notice Add to Favorites is an option. Before I click Add to Favorites, notice my focus over here is still modules. As soon as I say Add to Favorites, it opens up my Favorites menu with that new selection at the bottom. That is an AP report, and you'll notice I have created an AP folder on my Favorites menu. So I can take that monthly purchase report and drop it into my pre-configured AP reports folder. So this is something you decide what is on your favorites menu. So you get to pick what is on there. Once it's there, if you have a nickname, you call that something other than what the name is, you can right-click and rename it, give it your name, and it won't impact anyone else. It just changes it on your favorites menu. And then you can start to organize. You'll notice, again, the folder, so you can insert folders, put things in folders on your favorites menu, or just put these little lines to group things together. So those lines are called separators. So you just insert a separator, and it will put a line, and then you can, drag that line wherever you want it to be. Or maybe you don't want it anymore, you can delete it. So you, as the user, are able to say, I want this on my favorites menu. Once it's on the favorites menu, you can rename it to reflect what you call that activity. And then you can organize the favorites menu with favorites, with the separators and folders. Once you have it set up, now the maintenance as far as deleting, renaming, moving things around is always done in the lower pane. But one of the nice things here is this favorites tab at the top will display those things that you have flagged as a favorite. So instead of having to navigate the menu structure, those things that you use all the time are setting at the top on your favorites tab, waiting for the next time you need it. If you do drop something into a folder, all you got to do is click the drop-down box, and those items in the folders can be selected from the folder. Questions? Okay. Now, another tool to get around the system is what we call visual process flows. So you'll notice in this case, it's more functionality based than module specific. So sales, customer billing, inventory purchases, so different kind of functionality. So underneath these, there's different things. You see entry and invoice. So that's sales order entry and invoice, packing and shipping, returning goods, customer billing, AR, invoice and receipt payment. I'll skip some, purchase order entry and receipt, AP, invoice and process payment. So what I'm going to do is start with this AP, invoice and process payment. So instead of this kind of folder-driven navigation where I have a module menus and task in those folders or favorites, when I select one of these, it will actually open up a visual menu or a map of the process. So in this case, I have accounts payable mapped out from start to finish. AP invoice data entry, processing invoices for payment, posting those transactions, vendor maintenance, related inquiries, related reports. So this gives you that reference. Step one is enter invoice. Once those invoices are posted, when the terms come due, I get to do a payment. I can go in and create a check or use invoice payment selection to say, show me which invoices are due. I can process those payments. So this gives you kind of that reference, what order things typically occur. Now, what I can do is, it's not just a help screen. The text and the buttons themselves are linked to open the task. So if I need to do an AP invoice, clicking the button or the label will actually open AP invoice data entry. Otherwise, again, vendor maintenance, running a report. So this kind of gives you everything for a module in a single screen with that visual map or visual menu instead of that folder driven. Any questions here? Now, a nice thing about this too, I want to point out, is these can be customized. So any of these, if I go back to visual process flows, any of these processes, sales, AR invoicing, purchasing. If there's something that you don't need, you can delete that button and that label from the screen. If there's something that it would be nice, it'd be really convenient if I had a button on the screen to do this. You can add additional buttons to launch other things, and it's very easy to learn how to do on your own as well. So any questions at all on this?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Now, there's some other things. I think in the call yesterday, Brian mentioned some things. There are some things that come out of the box I want you to be aware of. So I'm going to scroll up here, another module that you get automatically. One more, before I go into that, I want to discuss security. Security in Sage 100 is based on roles. So what you would do is define kind of the jobs that people do in your company that would be using the accounting system: sales rep, accounting, AP clerk, inventory, production, and then you, under that role, you associate what modules, what menus, and what tasks that user can do. So I'll expand this out so you can kind of see AP divided into different areas. And then, for example, maintenance, and I'm going to scroll down and come down to, for particularly vendor maintenance. So when I give someone access to vendor maintenance, they typically have access to create a new vendor, modify an existing vendor, and or delete. Now, delete isn't just as easy. I can actually delete if a vendor has open POs, open invoices, the balances. You have to clear those before you can delete. So it's not like you can accidentally delete a vendor and get rid of stuff if there's activity on that vendor. But I'm going to expand this and show you that you actually can give someone access to vendor maintenance and restrict types of things they can do. So maybe vendors have to be approved and only certain users can create vendors. So I can actually uncheck create for some users and have some users have the ability to create. So only certain users can create new vendors if you need that type and level of restriction. Maybe I'm allowing them to modify only, and I can remove the delete option. So you have granularity under the task to say the types of things they can do when they're in there as well. So any questions on that?
No, I like that though. It's like you can, the other way, on the old one we have, you couldn't be that selective on what you restricted. So I like that.
Yeah, so that is a nice option that you have here. Now, once you define the security role, you would create the user. So you give that user a logon. So I'm going to log in with the one I'm logged in now, associate their name with that logon. And then if you end up with just, if you have one company, you can say, okay, in this company, this is your security role. If you end up with more than one company set up and defined in Sage 100, you can have, all companies with the same profile or, company by company. Maybe it's all the same for any company and sysadmin across the board, or maybe I have restrictions. In this company, I have this particular security role. So it can be specific to the company. It doesn't have to be, kind of one size fits all, the same security profile for every company defined. You can actually have different selections by company if you end up adding additional companies in the system. Now, another thing I'll point out is this user code. This user code will follow the user. Anything I do in the system, if I create an order, my user code is going to be associated with that order, whether it's a sales order or purchase order. If I create an invoice, create a vendor, create a customer, create an item, my user code is going to be associated with that activity. There are actually audit reports that you can run that would show you, who made this change. It would show you the change before, the value before the change, the value after, who made the change and when. And that's kind of throughout the system: vendors, items, customers, etc. Is there any questions there?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Now, a tool that comes out of the box that you get automatically is a tool called Paperless Office. Paperless has multiple functionality now, and it kind of works on two ends. So what I want to do is you say you want to use it, and then you have different places where you can do the setup down here. Now, what I want to do is kind of I'm going to leave this module. I'm going to go to a customer record to show you how Paperless works with the front end, with the customers and even vendors. So I'm going to pull up a specific customer record here. I'm going to go with 01 ABF. Now, with that customer, what I can do is come to Paperless, and this enables me to say, when I send you a sales order, who should it go to? Now, how about the invoice? Should the invoice go to that same person, or does it need to go to someone else? So this allows you to kind of say how the customer wants to receive documents. So AR invoices, statements, RMAs, sales order invoices, or sales order. So like a sales order confirmation, this customer has to just send it by email. I go to the email tab and I specify what emails to send it to, which contacts at ABF should get a copy of the sales order confirmation. So I also can say there's an email address field within the sales order. So if I manually type an email address there, I'm going to include that. I'm going to copy my primary contact, Artie. I'm copying John. And internally down here at the bottom, I'm copying myself. So anytime I send a document to my customer, I send myself as a BCC. I send myself a copy as well. So what's nice about this, it's, customer by customer and document by document. You may have customers where every document goes to the same contact. You may have customers where the sales order confirmation goes to the PO clerk, but the invoice and the statement needs to go to their AP clerk, and maybe also the purchasing agent there. But it allows you the flexibility to send it to the same person every time, every document, same person, or have it different distributions by document if you need to. And again, you can ask that customer to set that up. Now, what's nice is, I'll use statements as an example. When you generate the document, I'm going to go to period end and statement printing. Let's say that there's 25 customers in this statement batch. I'm going to change my option here. Notice this is defaulting to just print hard copies. I'm going to change the option to print PDF or electronic delivery. Now, let's say there's 25 customers in this statement batch. When I hit print, it is actually going to go through a process of checking to see, does this customer want a hard copy, an email, or a fax? If a hard copy is required, it will print the hard copy. If they want an email, it will generate an email and attach a PDF and email that customer. And if they want a fax, it will generate a fax. Now, this PDF option is going to save a copy of that document for you. So you don't necessarily have to email yourself. It would automatically create an archived copy. So let me just see if I have customer. Let me go back to the customer record. So let's say that maybe a couple months from now, Artie from ABF calls and says, I need a copy of my statement or invoice or sales order. I can go to the Invoices tab. I'll click this button, and this is going to access the PDFs that were generated and saved when I generated the document. So invoices, statements. So let's say they want a copy of this. I can select that and hit this button, and what you'll notice is it automatically pulls in. When I go to send the copy, it automatically retrieves the distribution list of who normally gets a copy of that document. Now, what's nice is, because it's a copy, Artie may say, don't worry about John. I can go ahead and delete the additional recipients before I send it. So any questions here?
No.
Now, this also, you have the similar functionality for a vendor, but on a vendor, of course, it's different types of documents. So paperless for vendors is the purchase order, sending a purchase order to your vendor, return orders, and as well as if you use ACH, check remittance advice. So you can email check remittance advice for payments to your vendors. Now, there's also some other things. Visual Integrator is a tool that comes bundled with Sage 100. This is an import-export tool. This is very convenient and will be heavily used during the implementation process. So going forward, let's say it's a time saver. So if, for example, if you outsource payroll, your payroll processing company probably provides files and information about the payroll runs. That information probably has to be keyed into the general ledger. What we're able to do with this import job maintenance is build a job mapped to that file information provided by the payroll servicing company, mapping Sage 100 to information in that file so that I can import the GL transactions versus having to manually key them in. So I think, let me see if I have any predefined jobs. So I'll just do a GL payroll, is kind of the example that I've just given you. So what I can do here is the file, if I get an Excel file from my payroll servicing company, I can specify the file type. And then on the data tab, I tell Sage 100 where to find the information in that source file, the GL account number, the debit amount, the credit amount, and it will import the GL transactions versus having to key them in. Now, this is can work across the board. If I can type it into the system in data entry, I can import it. Purchase orders, sales orders, invoices, pricing updates from a vendor, pricing updates that you want to apply to parts that you sell. So that tool can be used throughout the system, not just in the initial setup, but going forward to kind of streamline and, ease data entry. You can import if you have a file to import from. Questions? No. No, another thing I want you to be aware of is as we go through the demo today, there may be fields that you need that you may not see here today in the demo, because I do have some custom fields, but they may not be exactly what you need. I did create one based on listening to the call that you had with Brian yesterday to kind of show you the power of the tool. But we have a tool called Custom Office. Custom Office, again, comes automatically with the system. It has multiple functionality. The most common thing is this right here, user-defined field and table maintenance. So we do our best to provide what most people would need for the fields associated with a customer, a vendor, an item record. But where I see, like a specific industry, and you sell or make something very specific, we have generic inventory item fields, weight, volume, and pricing type details. You may have values that you need to associate, specifications or classes that you may need to associate with an item record that we didn't give you a place for. So we actually can come into Custom Office, go to User Defined Field and Table Maintenance, and I can add custom fields to the Sage 100 database. Again, I see that a lot in inventory, so I'll start CI Item Master is the inventory table where item records are defined. So if I need to create custom fields for items, I would take this table, I'll say Edit Fields, and I'm not really limited on, you'll notice here, it's not one or two. I have already defined in this company 43 different custom fields for inventory records and different types, text, drop-down boxes, check boxes, date fields. So as if you need very specific, data associated with inventory records, and it's not just inventory records, and keep in mind that's my example. I can do this for sales orders, for purchase orders, for vendors, for customers, for general ledger accounts. So this is just an example. So if I wanted to add a field, I could say plus. I can say, I'm just going to say new, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's I give it a name. And then I can say, what type of field do I want? Do I want a text box? So if I want a text box, I want to make sure I have a lot of room. I can say, that's not the limit, but I can say up to 256 characters. I mean, I can add more characters. I'm saying this field is going to be up to 256 characters. I can have bigger fields if I need to. Or maybe I want to provide a list for the user to select from. So instead of multi-line, I can say Dropbox. And I'm going to make this I'm going to change this back down to 10. And then I can go to the validation tab and provide the list that the user will see in that field to select from. Maybe this field doesn't apply to every item, so maybe I want to make my first selection in A. So if the value doesn't apply to every item, for the ones it doesn't apply to, I can say NA. And then I can say, I can provide a list of values that the user will be able to see and select from. So instead of providing a text box, this gives them a list of valid values to pick from to assign to that item record. So they're not typing from scratch, or they may not type a valid value, or maybe they have a spelling mistake or an extra space to kind of throw things off. So it kind of gives you the ability to kind of create fields from scratch. Now, the key thing here is I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And now the key thing, OK, what you're going to see next is that field that I just created is being added to the data table. It's becoming a part of Sage 100's database. So I can add that field to the item record screen. I can add it to reports. I can add it to sales orders, purchase orders, etc. Any questions there?
No.
Now, because this tool is built into Sage 100, I'm not doing custom programming. Sage 100 knows exactly how that field was created. So if I upgrade from this version that I'm in right now to the new version, I don't have to recreate that. it will be able to upgrade that automatically. So let me kind of show you an example. If I go to inventory maintenance, I have several fields here. So I'm just going to kind of show you. Everything on this tab except required temp is standard. So required temp is an example where I created a custom field from scratch and added it to the screen. Now, in this case, what I did was there was a little bit of space under the sales unit of measure and between the primary vendor field there. So I kind of just squeezed it into an existing screen where I had room. So if there's open space on a screen, I can put something between standard fields, like I did here with required temp. If there's more information than one or two fields, and you don't have enough room on an existing screen, you can create a custom tab. So tab number 8 is a tab I added, and here you see an example of a custom tab and multiple types of fields. So I have text fields where I can just type, check boxes, drop-down boxes, and like where I created that field earlier, let's say I want to add it here, so I can say panel settings, customizer. And this is how, again, what I'm going to do is I'll just keep this to all. This gives me the ability to come in over here. And now what I can do is essentially draw out where I want that new field to be. It'll show me the list of custom fields that are available to add to the screen that I've defined as a custom field. So just scroll down and find that new 1, 2, 3, 4. I can even preview that before I save it to make sure everything looks good. And then I can go ahead and save. So the great thing, again, hopefully you can see here that this is something that you can learn how to do on your own, so that as you learn the system, and there's like, it should be nice if you had a place to put this data. Now, you have a tool to define the field and add it to the screen. Any questions?
Yes. Brian said that we can fix our inventory. Inventory in Sage, when we brought it in, some of the items were stock items, some of them were not stock items. All of our stuff needs to be a stock item, and he said that we can fix that with Sage 100 and make everything back to a stock item. That is correct, right?
Yeah, so your non-stocked items in Sage, so the non-stocked items will be imported. You can import them. So if you have like an item number, an item code in Sage 50 associated with what is a non-stocked item in Sage 50, it can be imported into Sage 100. Now we'll have to add some additional information to it, but it could be set up as an item, a stocked item going forward. So we can take those what were non-stocked items, associate them with an item, a part number, an item number in item maintenance, and define them as a stocked item going forward.
And it will not change the part number, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, as long as the part number is less than 30 characters, we can take what was a non-stocked part with a part number in Sage 50, take that same part number and define it as an item in a stocked item in Sage 100.
I'm not quite following you. So let's say you got part number ABCD and it's a non-stock. How would you take that and change it to a stock?
So in Sage 100, all of my stocked items are in. So if it's here in item maintenance, it's an item. So if you have a part number now associated with a non-stocked item, in Sage 100, if I bring it over and put that part number in item maintenance as an item code and add all the required fields, it would be a stocked item. So going forward, it would be considered a stocked item once it's in Sage 100 in this file. As long as it's set up under item maintenance with the required fields, product line, and all these values associated with it, it will be a stocked item.
Okay.
Now, again, we may have to add additional things. It's going to need additional things once it's moved to Sage 100. It's going to need like a product line associated with it. And, some of these fields will have to be associated with it. But once it's here and saved, it's an item record. In Sage 100, let me kind of show you, I have non-stocked items in a different place. So in Sage 100, I can set up and maintain, we call them miscellaneous items. So these are essentially non-stocked items. So this would be a non-stocked item in Sage 100. So I have an item code, miscellaneous, unit price, unit cost. So I could put this on a sales order. I could put it on an invoice. I could create a purchase order for it. But it's not, I wouldn't have quantity on hand. I would never have quantity on hand for this. Now, in Sage 100, we have a little more flexibility for non-inventoried items. Even though I don't have stock, I don't keep, quantity on hand, I do have history. So I think this is one of the problems you had with non-stocked items in 50. There's no history. Sage 100 provides, I can see history of sales and purchases on non-stocked items. We keep track of how many, your quantity sold, dollars sold, and quantity received, dollars received for non-stocked items in Sage 100. So there's more flexibility, I think, and more detail. There's history on the non-stocked items in Sage 100 that's not available in 50. But again, if you still need non-stocked items, they can define in common information, miscellaneous item, and I can have history. But again, if you want it to be an inventory stocked item, you would define it under item inventory maintenance as an item.
Okay. How do you handle the bill of materials?
So there's a module. So let me kind of show you. So whether I'm going to change companies here real quick. So let me just get into a different company code here real quick where I have that defined. So inventory is kind of the foundation. So whether it is a raw material that I use to make a finished good or the finished good itself, I'm going to define it as an item. So I want to kind of pull up an item record here. Now, let me just see here. I'm going to go to a desktop 100 system. So this is in my demo data, this is a finished good. It's a multi-level bomb. I actually have like a motherboard that I build. I have a memory chip and a case that has different parts in it. So at the top, so I have my item code. I say it's a finished good. And notice I can say, is this something that I buy or I make? So this is kind of telling the system whether it's something that I buy as a raw material or parts that I may buy, put in stock, sell as a part, or, maybe I may issue that to material I buy. So this, now I would have to set up the bill of materials separately, but once the bill of material has been defined for this, if I use this drop-down box, I can access the bill of materials for this item from the item record. If I hadn't defined it yet, I'd have to go define the bill of material. So in this case, I have bill of material, which is a separate module that is linked directly to the item record because a BOM existed for this item. So I have now I'm looking at the bill number, which is the item number we were just looking at. I can have revisions. So if it changes over time, I can have a revision 1, 2, 3, 4 going forward. I can have different types of bills. So if there's an engineering bill, it could be something that I'm working on. It's not quite finished. We're building and developing a new version. I could say engineering. Standard is essentially, okay, it's a production, it's in production now. Now, down here at the bottom, I can specify current revision. So if there are more than one revision, this is where I can say what the current or production version is right now. So that's kind of specifying all the revisions exist, which one should be used or the default one to use. And yield percentage in this case is for everyone, let's say for every 100 I build, 2 fail. So if I need 100, it would plan for 102. So I can kind of build in that, yield ratio for the finished good production, what my typical, failure rate would be. Now on the lines tab, this is where I'm specifying what components are required to build a desktop computer system. So in this case, I need 1 cabinet, I need 1 motherboard, I need 2 pieces of memory. I'm using a couple different, 1 each of 2 different VGA cards and a keyboard. Now, I also have some other things. I have some non-material. I have comments inserted in here, and then I even have some miscellaneous charge codes to represent non-material costs of the labor operations or labor costs within the bill structure. So, any questions on this?
Yeah, the bill number we could use their part number there, right? Is that where their part number would go?
So typically that is the part number. That bill number is the same as my. So if I went back to notice, this is my item record. So that's essentially my, it's equal to my part number. So my item number or part number is the same as the bill number.
All right. I think he said that he was familiar with E2 Shop, and as long as we can export it into Excel, we can bring it into this, right?
Correct. So that tool I talked about earlier when I was talking about payroll. So E2 Shop, as long as E2 Shop can export to CSV, Excel, comma delimited, even if it's ODBC compliant, we can map to the file you get out of E2 Shop and then import the bill of materials structure directly into Sage 100 instead of having to key them all manually. Question?
All right, that covers that.
Now, let me kind of show you. Now, let me kind of, do you, in your, what you build now, do you have sub-assemblies? Are there things that you build that have their own bombs? Are they multi-level bill of materials that you use now?
No.
Okay. So I just want to show. So in this case, these three where you see this asterisk for the revision, those are sub-assemblies. The bill of materials can support up to 99 levels. So you may not need them now. If you in the future have multi-level bills, we can it's definitely supported it, and very complex, I would say, up to, for up to 99 levels. Now let me kind of show you. Let's say there are some tools that if you need to change the structure of bill of materials. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bill of materials module itself now. Down here under change control, let's say that a vendor notifies you or manufacturer says, as of a certain date, this part is going to be obsoleted and it's going to be replaced with this, brand new improved version. And oh, by the way, it has a new part number. So this would give you the ability to apply a change. So I can come in and say, as of, with an effective date, with this bill number, this new item is being added and this old item is being deleted. So you'll have that effective date that you can play with. And again, the old item, it's just obsolete. It's not necessarily bad. You could still build what you have always built. It's just, the vendor or manufacturer of that part is phasing out the old version and introducing a new version. So that would give you the ability to manipulate the effective date. So if after the effective date comes and goes, you still have the old items in stock, they're not bad. They've just been obsoleted by the vendor. You could backdate your effective date to consume the old version, or forward date it to consume the new version. So it kind of gives you some flexibility. Now there's also tools where you can say, hey, we have this item that is always catastrophically fails. We want to get it out of the bill structure. I can do a replace or delete. So let's say delete. So what I can do is, in this case, I can specify the component. And what it will do is it will go look for that item as a component of whatever bill. So if I run this report, it's going to show me every occurrence of that item in the bill structure. So it occurs in, it looks like 3 different bombs. And then what it will do is ask me if I want to update. So if I update, it will delete that item from all of those bombs automatically. So maybe I just wanted the list of where it occurred, so I could say no and do that manually if I wanted to be cautious. But if I say yes, it will delete that from every bomb it found. Now, there's also an option, instead of delete, I could say replace. And in this case, I can say find this item, and where you find this item, let me just pull in a motherboard. Where you find this item, replace it with this one. So it would do a similar functionality where when I run that, it would essentially scan for this one where it finds the bill structure with this. It would ask me, it would show me that list of where it found, bills with this item, and it would ask me if I want to update. And when I say yes, this would be automatically replaced with that. So it's kind of like, if there's a recall or a failure, or you're just revising the bill structure, I need to find every occurrence of this and update it to replace it with this. This gives you a tool to do that automatically versus having to go manually apply those changes on a bomb by bomb basis. Questions?
Yeah, kind of off of this subject just a tad, but let's say we put an order in and we're missing something in the bill of material. It's going to tell us then, right?
Yeah, so there's different tools that you can use. So let me kind of show you. I can always at any time, let me go here too. So you can come in, even let's say if you want to plan this, there's different things. I'm at one level of manufacturing right now, just with bill of materials. So I can run either the component requirements or gross. So these two reports will kind of give you the idea. So let's say if I want to build 25 of these, so I can come in and say, I'm planning for or need to plan for building 25 of, this item. So when I preview that, this will actually show you all the components, the total quantity based on how many you build, and tell you how many are available. So it will give you the exact quantity short by item. So you can always, that's the kind of on demand that you can always run. Now there's other tools depending on what level of manufacturing we go with. Now, bill of materials by itself, I can define the bill, what components are required in the bill. It has a component within it that would allow me to record production. In this case, it's after the fact, so I can't create a work ticket and say, hey, I'm going to put this on the shop floor and track where it's going. This is for people who don't need, let's say, work in process. Maybe they just ask the shop floor manager, hey, how many units did you produce today? I can come here to production entry, and I'm just going to record productions. I'm going to take the information that he said, the number he gave me. So let's say I'm going to stick with that desktop 100 system. So if they say they built 10, so I'm going to say how many units he completed a day. Now the parent warehouse is where those 10 units are going to be put into inventory too, and the component warehouse is where it's going to consume or backflush out the material that was used to produce those 10. So if I go to lines based on how many, so now you're seeing to build 10, now it's incorporating scrap and yield percentages that were in the bill structure. But basically to produce 10 of those, it's telling me we would have consumed 22 motherboards, 11 cabinets, 22 keyboards. Now these items, do you have anything that is serialized or lot numbers associated with them where you need to track a serial number or a lot number for items either that you make or that you use to produce something?
We have a date code that we insert in our castings, so the date code has to be tracked.
Okay. So that may be something that we may want to, what you'll notice here, these items are either lot or serialized. So basically what this is saying, yeah, we know you need this, but what the system is asking for now is, because that asterisk, I would have to now say what lot, in this case it's a lot number, but maybe the lot number could be that casting code. So I have a unique number that I can create one from scratch. So these are, I'm going to just issue some, in this case, I'm saying this was what we used. It had this casting code or lot number associated with it. Now, what you'll notice, I have to tell it that. So this item is set up with a lot track, lot valuation. So I have to specify that. You'll notice that little, that exclamation point went away because I told it the information it needs. Now, these items also are set up with a valuation where, in this case, instead of that lot number, now it needs 11 different serial numbers. So these are serialized. So I would have to come in and actually tell it which serial numbers I used if I have 11 serial numbers available here. So I told it I used 11, which serial numbers, and that that went away. Now, what's nice is, let's say that in this case, for this order, they didn't need the keyboard. I can override the bill of material and remove that item. Let's say for this build, we didn't use that. If I needed to, I could insert something that we substituted. So you do have the ability to override. For this production run, they didn't use this. This was eliminated from the build, or we used something instead of. So I could insert a line and reflect that I used something instead of something else, or just delete it altogether. It wasn't used at all. Questions?
Oh, that pretty much covers that part. So
yeah, I'm going to hit the printer button here, and I'm going to just say yes. So this is the update. So this is the process in which it's going to calculate the unit cost. So the item that I just built, it's going to show me essentially how many I produced. So in this case, I have my production number, the item being produced, how many were produced, and then I have all the items that I used, how many were required per unit, how many were used in total, the unit cost, the total cost of the material. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, this is my unit cost for each computer and the total cost of all 10 being produced. When I say yes to update, it is putting the 10 finished items are setting in inventory. So I can now go invoice those out to the customer. Any of the component items, the motherboard, the cabinets, the memory chips that I used have been reduced from inventory. So it just pulled those out of inventory and basically created a transaction showing that they were issued to a production run. Questions there?
I would add, but while I'm thinking about it, will this utilize date codes if we choose to do it? Barcodes.
Yes. So there are. You'll notice if you want to be more, let's say, mobile, you'll notice I have mobility for barcode. So if you want and need to have, let's say, the ability to speed things up in the warehouse, like say, I can do physical, instead of having to print a physical count worksheet, I could give I could do physical count on an app on a mobile device, iPhone, Android, or Windows mobile type devices, so that they could be scanning barcodes. So barcode is just a font. So even, let's say, even in a standard data entry screen, if I have a barcode scanner and I have a barcode of the item code, instead of typing the item code, I could scan. Sage 100 doesn't care. It's just accepting data. It doesn't care if you type it or you scan it. But there's also, again, what you see here is, instead of for your warehouse people or people on the floor, this would give them the ability to, on the receiving dock, I could scan the purchase order number. I could scan the item code, verify the quantity received, scan the next item being received, the quantity so anything that I could type, I could capture that transaction on a handheld and then have that flow directly from the handheld into Sage 100.
Okay.
Now let me ask you, with bill of materials, again, I showed you defining the bill of material. I showed you that I could record production. Do you, for what you build, if you're building it for an order or even for inventory, do you have an order that you're building stock, whether it's for an order or for a specific customer or to put into inventory? Do you want the ability to create a work ticket, have that work ticket open so you can see, let's say, if it takes a week or more than a week, how many units you plan, how many you have completed, tracking your work in process? Is that something you need, or has what you've seen enough kind of after the fact recording of production? Is that sufficient, or do you need to see a work ticket where we're going to build 100 of these units and it's been open for 4 days and they've completed 10 units so far?
Possible. E2 did all that. And the problem with E2 was we was just generating a crap ton of paper. And we had set it up to where we'd scan the barcodes and all that. And it was just, I think a lot of part of it too was when we did E2, they sold us the finite scheduling and all that. And after we bought it and paid a lot of money for it, they decide, well, we got the wrong software, and that's kind of what pushed us to the Sage 100, because Sage 50 won't do a lot of stuff that E2 would do, but maybe somewhere, yeah, we would do some barcode and scanning, but I wanted to just see if it had the capabilities of it. But when we first implement this thing, no, we're not going to set it up to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's
so.
Kind of
basically, what we do is, like when we make a propeller for a fan, we got the blades, we got the hub, we got some nuts and the bolts, and that goes into bill of materials. So we just a crap ton of blades, hubs, and all this, and we just, and when we get the customer sends us in a PO number, we just sit there and that's all tied to their part number, and it pulls all the parts.
Okay.
Actually, we don't make propellers to stock. We don't make a lot of stuff to stock. We make a lot of our blanks that haven't been machined to stock.
Okay. Well, let me show you production management here real quick. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with a sales order coming from a customer. So I'm going to go to sales order entry. I'm going to just say next sales order number. I'm going to pull in the customer that the order is going to be for. We'll just say Breslin here. Now, I can do credit check. I have a security profile that allows me to say, okay, they're a good customer. I'm just going to say, okay. Some people would have to go get someone with authorization to override what I just saw. I have a profile that says I am able to make the decision and say they're a good customer. They're going to get right. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay. What I'm going to do now is going to go to lines, and I'm going to say that they want to order desktop 100. So let's say, instead of starting with like putting it into inventory, make the stock, I'm not making this until I get an order. So you'll notice I don't have it on hand because, I've got so many orders. So I'm going to say they want 25 of these. And again, I got to make it. So this is normal. I don't have it on hand. It's not available because I have to build it for this customer. So in this case, I'm creating sales order 43 for 25 desktop 100s. I'm just going to go ahead and hit accept here. Now, I do want to point out, let me just say on the print, I haven't customized the screen. Let me go to lines here real quick. Let me just see if I have it down here. I think this is where you said you may have some confusion. So you have a ship date on the header. So there's a ship date here. And then on the lines tab, this is their out of the box promise date. So this could be, we could change the terminology. So when it prints on the order confirmation, instead of printing promise date, it could be estimated arrival date. So I think you mentioned that you don't want to confuse the customer. You want to give them the date that they can be looking for this to arrive on their dock. So we could change this from promise date to be estimated arrival date or whatever terminology you want to present to them. Or I could create a custom field called, that specific date, so that that can print on, when you send the sales order confirmation to your customer, that they could have that, arrival date, when they can anticipate that showing up at their location. Make sense?
Yeah. What about multiple
Now,
What about multiple ship dates? Like, what if there's multiple promise dates or multiple?
Well, if the same item has multiple, if it's the same item, I would have to create multiple lines with different quantities and the specific ship date. So if I'm planning on sending that multiple times, I would just repeat that item again with the quantity that's promised and the promise date for that line.
Or what if it's different? Is it the same if it's different items?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if
Okay,
it's a
so what about
item,
our date? Like when I'm going in, because I'm production, and I print a back order report, what about the ship dates? Because some of those might have different ship dates. Like one might be a 4-week lead time, one might be a 6-week lead time.
So you said on like a back order report?
Yeah, like you just did the ship dates and the promise date. Can we change to have multiple ship dates as well?
So there's even an open orders by promise date. So any of the reports here, I'm going to preview this. These can be cut. So this is by promise date. I can change this. So I can create custom versions of this report with different sorting, different data, different selection criteria. So keep in mind that this is kind of the standard. But if I come in here, again, if I go back here, if that standard report isn't the format that you need, now you'd have to learn how to do Crystal, and this is something the implementation will be able to, Crystal is typically an expertise of an implementation team. So this is how this report is set up. So this is the standard. So I would have access to, if I needed to add an additional field, here are all the fields that are available. So I could add the ship date, the promise date. So I could modify this to have the fields that you need. I could even add, let's say the table here doesn't have what I need. I could add the table that contains the data that I need so it can be printed on that report. So we will have the ability to get the information in the format that you need it. Make sense?
Okay, so like on the PO, say like when I'm getting into a new PO, and then the ship date, the R date, what we would see, not the promise date, the actual ship date. If I have two different ship dates, how do I put that in there on one sales order or a purchase order? For when you issue a purchase order to a vendor? No, like if a customer sends me a purchase order.
Okay. Go back to sales order now. So on the top, there is, by default one ship date. But if I go, let me pull in the customer. And this is their PO number. No, the lines tab. Let me see here. So keep in mind, so I promised it. Let me see if. So these are down here at the bottom. These are all the fields that if I need it up here, I can add, I can just drag it from down here to the top. I want to see if ship date is here by default. So if like right now, it just defaults to the promise date or the date that they would get it. If you want to put your ship date here, I may have to do a user-defined field. So I could create a field with Custom Office for the shipping date that you would be shipping it from your location, and the promise date could be overridden, to be the date that it would arrive for them. So we could just create a field for your ship date to be on each line, and it would be line by line.
Yeah, because Brian, yesterday we were talking to him, and he said that we could use it where you put the user defined in there. But when I send acknowledgments out of Sage, I want them to be able to see their promise date. I don't want them to see my ship date. So when I'm running a backlog, I want to see every ship date. So like that PO 99 whatever has 3 different ship dates. I'm going to need to see all of those ship dates, not the promise dates. So I'm going to need both to be on there.
Yeah, so that's just a matter of customizing the report to have all the fields you need to see.
Okay, so that is doable.
That is doable. And even like, let's say, on the customer itself, when you send the acknowledgement to the customer, let me just pull up an existing one, that acknowledgement form itself, let me just get in here real quick. When I go to print order, just like I could do with the report, the form, the sales order confirmation form or the acknowledgement, I can modify this. So like the default would be the ship date. If you don't want your ship date to appear, we could remove the ship date and just have, the promise date and have that label or, estimated arrival date or whatever the label you want it to be. So again, this form can be customized to show them what you need them to see, not your ship date that you're shipping it out, but their estimated arrival date.
Yeah, because a lot of our customers complained when we were sending them our ship date because it was so confusing. That's why we have an in-house date and a ship date.
Yeah, so you can have that, you can have that customer. That's the reason why,
because each offered that and Sage didn't. That's why we were just curious.
Yeah. So you can create a customer, one that's customer friendly, the exact way that you want the customer to see that. Now, inside of Sage 100, when you're in data entry, you would see all that information. And you can have reports that show you all that information. But on this form, you can streamline this to be what you want the customer to see.
Okay. Sounds good.
And even, let's say, even if you need, let's say this customer has some weird requirements, I can create a form code unique to that customer. I could have one that is, this customer has some weird things, some additional things. I can create formats, multiple formats. So I can say, most customers, I use this form code, that shows them the estimated, arrival date. But this customer needs that plus some other fields. So I can have a unique, I can have multiple versions of the sales order acknowledgement where, the vast majority goes, I use one form for most of the customers, but these, maybe there's a customer that has a government contract and they have to have a specific format. We can have, we can map to their needs and give them the acknowledgement with to conform to their requirements.
So what if, say, the customer sends me a dropship order and they want that PO number on there, like a tag PO number or like a little note on it or something? How would I put like notes and stuff on a PO?
So there's a couple things you can do. So at the line level, so if it's like, say, I need to put a note on a line, so you have this comment. So there's a comment field. Yeah. Oh, and here's, okay. I had already added, here's where I forgot I did this earlier. I created the user defined field. So here's, I created estimated arrival date. I forgot I had added to the screen already. So promise date's already there. Here's the user defined field that I named estimated arrival date. But this would allow you to say a note for this particular line. And that's not just limited. Just to kind of show you, it will word wrap. So I can have a big old long comment. It will keep going. Now, what's nice is, let's say I want additional information underneath that. I can also just say that this line is just going to be a comment. So I can enter /C, and that says this is a comment line. So it just allows me to put another comment underneath the previous line.
Hey, I come up with another question. I'd watched some YouTube videos. Now, if a customer sends in a PO and she's entering it, and there's an item on there that we buy, and it's not in stock, it will do a purchase order for that part at that time if we do it?
You can enable that. I don't have it turned on in this company. Let me show you. Let me kind of show you. So I can turn on the ability. Let me see where I got to go here. Let me go into I need to close out of here. I got to change options. So let me close out my sales orders here real quick. So I have the ability to have a generate purchase order button on sales order. I don't have that turned on in this company, in this demo setup now. So let me just get out of here real quick.
But you don't have to show us that is correct.
Yeah, so essentially you have multiple options. So you can do it one by one. So if you want to, or if that's something that you would need to do, you can enable that, and you would have a button here that says generate purchase order. Now, what you'll notice is I have very basic details now down here at the bottom. If that's not a stocked item, I would be able to specify at the line level. Notice here, I can specify what vendor. So if that's a special item I got to buy, I can specify the vendor that I would be buying that from. So when I go to the totals tab, it would know what vendor to issue the purchase order for that, that one time, that special purchase.
Yeah, and then it'll email it to them, right?
Correct. As long as that vendor is set up with that, remember the paperless, as long as you have said, when I print the PO and you have the email, email specified to deliver the purchase order and have the email address there, when I hit print order, it will generate the purchase order, and you have this option here to print PDF and electronic delivery. So when I hit print, it would email that PO to the vendor.
That's cool.
Or there's a sales order, but same. Questions? Now you also, that button is one at a time. Let's say that you have multiple orders that have been processed, that have multiple POs that need to be generated from purchase order. This auto-generate from sales orders. This gives you the ability to say, I want to look at, it would look at all the sales orders. So if you don't want to do it one by one, you know you have multiple sales orders, this would look at all those lines that need to be purchased and generate multiple purchase orders at one time instead of doing one by one. So you have that one by one option that you can enable, or you can come into PO, auto generate from sales orders, and say, look at this status, this type of sales order, this type of sales order status, this type of procurement method, what item types, and then even let's say, combine multiple items from the same vendor into one PO, or if they need to be different. Make sense?
Yeah. Now, my other main concern is how much customizable, that's a word, can you do the packing slip?
It's just like we saw with reports and sales orders and purchase orders. That is a form in Crystal. So, for example, sales order, let me go under shipping, packing list printing. It's a Crystal form as well. I don't have it enabled here, so let me just get into, let me just turn it on here. Even let's say I can turn the sales order into a packing list, but I have packing list under shipping here. Let me just turn on shipping data entry. And remember where I'm at.
And while we're on the same lines, we cannot double ship anything, right?
Yeah, so once an order is shipped, it will, you have your ordered quantity. Once you process a shipment, create shipments and or invoice it, it creates that shipped quantity. So you would get a warning if you try to ship it again.
Okay, but if on the same one, and we send the pick list over there, and they put, say there's supposed to be 20 items, and they do 30, and it comes back over here, and she tries to put 30 in on a 20 item part, it'll say something's wrong, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So if there's a PO that has multiple lines, once that item is shipped, will it take it off wherever you go to make a packing list, or will it be on there? It'll just say beside it quantity already shipped.
Yeah. So typically, if you've already shipped it, that line won't be on the next packing list. So it would be what's in that particular. The packing list is typically what is packed in that shipment. So if you have shipped it multiple times, your invoice may show your ordered quantity and total quantity invoiced over time. But for each shipment, the packing list should just reflect what the quantity in that particular shipment.
Yeah, that part's just like
so packing list printing. So again, this is I have the default, but just like before, I can change this to incorporate to make sure it is the packing list that your customer needs to receive.
Okay, the packing list, when I send them to our customers, because I email them once they've shipped, is there a way I can put a tracking number in there to be like, hey, this one item shipped on such and such and such via this truck? Is there a way that I can add that in there, or?
Let me ask you, are you, when you ship, are you shipping with UPS? Are you shipping with FedEx? Is it always LTL?
I do.
All of the above?
Every truck on there is. And I do UPS ground, I do UPS freight, I do FedEx freight, I do literally everything. So
in Sage 100, notice I have shipping data entry here. Shipping data entry can be linked to a shipping software that can link to UPS, FedEx, U.S. Postal Service, trucking lines. So this gives, I don't have it completely configured here. So this would give your user an interface, your shipping department, so they can come in and say what shipped. Let me go into ABC. I'm going to change company. I think ABC is set up for shipping. Let me just see here real quick. So this interface is designed for, like, say, the shipping department or the warehouse, whoever's processing the order. So they can say, you know, the shipper ID is the person who is packing that order or processing that order for shipment. Then I can come in and say which order I'm shipping. So this allows me to say, if this is multiple boxes, I can say, you know, in this case, everything's fitting in one box. But if this goes into 1 or 2 or 3 boxes or multiple pallets, they can actually say what is in each box or pallet and how many pallets in total. And then if I go to the shipping tab, this is where, you know, I have my ship to address, the number of packages. Now, I mentioned that shipping service. So I could click a button here, and what it would do is send the number of packages. It would send the service, the shipping service that we want to use and the service option and the ship address into the shipping software. The shipping software can link to, so again, in this case, it would automatically say UPS because we say UPS here, but it could be a truck line. Maybe I need to go out and get a rating from a trucking company, it's, you know, or FedEx, et cetera. So that would connect to the whatever shipper. So from one system, it can connect to UPS, FedEx, US Postal Service tracking. So it would get your box sizes, your weight, and it would calculate the freight by connecting to UPS or FedEx, et cetera, and it would get the tracking.
Freight?
Huh?
Does it do FedEx freight? Does it do like freight companies like LTL?
Yes, LTL, yes, absolutely.
So I can literally make the bill in Sage almost.
Correct. And what's nice is when you save it in that system, it will send shipping notifications to your emails. Shipping, you know, it will send them the tracking number. You can have it if you don't want them to do it. You can disable it, but it can send shipping notifications to your customers for you. When you save the record in the shipping software, it will write back. So as soon as it's saved there, it will write back the freight amount and the tracking numbers to the shipment record.
That's cool. And then once it's shipped, it sends to the customers as well?
Correct.
Oh my gosh.
So,
John,
once I save this, yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, when I hit accept, it automatically, so this was the shipper, you know, processing the order for shipment. When I hit accept, it automatically goes to the packing list. So this is, again, you may want to modify this, but I'm just going to show you, this is the default. You know, you can have your company logo. So this is, you know, number of packages, 1 item, how many are being shipped. Now, if this was more than 1, you know, this is the only box I'm shipping, but let's say that this was multiple shipments. This is the master. So this would be the packing list for the entire shipment. You know, let's say if there were 5 boxes, this would document how many boxes and everything in all 5 boxes. The next step, additional packing list, is the packing list per box. And again, it's going to be the same thing I just saw, box number 1. But if this, again, was a 5-package shipment, I would get a pack list for box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, and box 5. I'll have a detailed packing list per box as they pack it.
Sometimes like a little driver that has, and there are like 5 different boxes. When I'm doing my UPS, I have to print 5 labels for it. So if I tell it in here I have 5 boxes for the same weight and dimensions, it's going to print 5 labels for me?
Yes. So that shipping software would print carrier-approved labels. It would print all the required labels for you as well.
That's cool. Okay.
Now that when they save the shipping record, when they're done with the shipping record, it automatically creates the invoice for that shipment in invoice data entry. So you don't have to call shipping and say what orders have you shipped. As they ship it and save it, it will automatically populate into Sage the shipment, including the shipper that processed it. The tracking numbers would be pulled into the invoice automatically. You don't have to rekey it. It grabs it from the shipping record and puts it into the invoice automatically. And then it's just a matter of you can then review the financial details, and then you can print and deliver the invoice to the customer from here.
Okay. Well, that makes it a lot easier because I do the packing list and everything. I do the packing, and
Okay.
I'm shipping. I do the packing list, and an invoice every day.
Okay.
Shipping turns everything into me.
Okay.
So it would only be me. So shipper ID would just be me all day, every day.
Okay. It's like me in my demo world where I do everything. I'm everything.
Yes.
And I started, Brian mentioned I was a warehouse. I started, it was 26 years ago now. I started in a company as a receiving clerk when Sage 100 was DOS. That's how long I've worked with the system. So I used to, like I could 10 key my receipts, like PO number, enter, quantity received, enter, and then next PO. And then after 6 months, I became the warehouse manager. So, so picking, packing, shipping, receiving, I did all that. And I, as a former warehouse manager, I can tell you I love doing physical counts. That was the best thing ever.
All right. What about quality control?
Now, let me ask you, out of the box, what are your quality control steps?
Well, actually, the deal is we are ISO 9000, and the quality is all tied into E2. And I think Brian said this would do quality control as far as issue and return material numbers and all that, but will it do, what all will it do?
I need, what steps, or how do you how are you capturing, or how does E2 handle quality?
Well, I don't
do it. Is it a workflow where things have to be tested, and then once they're tested?
No. Let's say one of our customers has a damaged part, a part comes apart, manufacturer's defect, they tore it up, whatever, they want us to look at it. So we issue them a return number, and she tracks it, what we do to it, what we did to it, send it back to them, whatever.
So like a review and repair, essentially.
Yeah, or we scrap it, but we keep track of it in there because it's tied to a purchase order number.
Okay, so we have what we call a RMA, a Return Merchandise Authorization module, which when a customer calls and says, hey, maybe, this part's defective, or this, it was damaged in shipping, whatever the problem may be, damage in shipping, it's defective. I can create, this is the, the return number. This is where I would initiate the return number. So I just say next RMA, and then I can come down to the customer, and I'm going to say, let me pick ABF here. So this is where I'm specifying which customer has this problem. Now note, I can say, they're going to return it, how they're going to return it, where, specify where they need to return it to. Now I can do things like inspect on receipt. When I get this back, I want to make sure someone inspects it. Is this something that, is it so critical to the customer's business? Do I need to cross-ship them a replacement immediately? So I can say, cross-ship is basically saying, I'm not waiting for the return. I need to get them a replacement part right away. So I can create a sales order to get the replacement out the door immediately, not waiting for that return. So that's something I can do. I'm not going to check that now because, maybe again, they're going to send it back. You got to review it, inspect it, repair it to see if it's customer initiated damage or, a defect in the build or part or something like that nature. So cross-ship is
It's very rare we do that, but we have done it on occasion.
Yeah, it's available. So again, that's what that cross-ship. If I select cross-ship, it would automatically generate a sales order to get them a replacement. Basically, I'm sending them a replacement while they're sending me a return. It's a critical part. They can't run. I need to get them that part. So we're just going to get them the replacement out. Now, on the lines, this is where I can specify the invoice that part was associated with. And here's where it's showing me all the lines. And I can even, I have a code here where I just charged them to rush something. So these are the items. There were 20 items. And I can even specify if an item is returnable. Now I can override that. Now notice at the bottom, I can specify what is the customer asking us to do? Do they want just to, they want to return it and just get a credit for it? Do they want it replaced? They want it repaired? So I can specify what the customer what the customer is expecting. Are they, credit, replacement, repair? So, I can say repair or replace or whatever, let's just default to return. What do I expect to have to do with the item? Did I send them the wrong part? So they got the part and said, this isn't it. It's still in the original packaging. I'm returning it. I can put it back in stock. Is it damaged? Is it going to be scrapped? Can I repair it? So I can put what I anticipate doing with the item. And then if it was a part that, a component part that was bad from the vendor, I can even say, specify vendor action. Do I need to get a vendor to replace that part for us or get a credit for the part from a vendor? So I can even bring in what the vendor if I need to. I'm going to leave none on this case. And on the return, I can have different return reasons. So there's a return reason report. So you can run that report. So if there's an item that is showing a lot of defects, you would see that, defective on the return reason report for an item or items. You could kind of, examine, that part and, if you can get it from another vendor, from another manufacturer, you need to have some feedback with that manufacturer to say, hey, this part's failing a lot. So any questions so far?
Yeah, if you check off the credit, will it already automatically send them the credit on that one part?
So let's say not automatically. So
okay.
So I'm just saying what they expect. I'll show you. It will generate a credit at some point. I'll show you when. So right now I'm just saying what they expect. They're sending it back and they want a credit. It's not when I say okay, I'm not, and it even checks a warranty code. I'm just gonna say okay. So that exceeded. Now I can actually say they're not returning all 20. Let's say there was just one of the 20 that they're returning. So I can override the invoice quantity with the specific amount. Maybe it's one or two, but I can override that and say the exact return quantity. So this is just, again, initiating the RMA. Now I can print an RMA to send to them so they have the, so they say, print this out and include it in the box and write the RMA number on the box, so your receiving department will know, hey, that's a return. Here's the RMA number. So that's, initiating the RMA. Now, when that part arrives, when that return gets back to your building, to your receiving dock, they will use this RMA receipts entry. So kind of like a PO, but I'm doing an RMA receipt. So I'm going to say which RMA I'm receiving, and here's that flag. Make sure you inspect it. Now I go to lines. Now this may be open for a while, but I can come in and see what the customer expectation is, what we expect to do with that item. So now let's say I go through this and I go ahead and I want to update this to note that it was received. So I'm going to hit the printer icon, and this is the point at which if I need to generate a replacement order, this would be the sales order number. This would be the invoice, the next invoice or credit memo number. Next PO, if I need to do a PO to replace it or return order. So this is kind of giving me summarized details. So what I'm going to do is hit proceed, and then I'm going to hit the printer icon. So now it's going to tell me what it just did or what it's about to do. So for that return, it's telling me it is going to generate, it's not going to generate a sales order to replace it. It's going to generate the credit memo to credit the customer, no return order and no purchase order. So it's, again, depending on those actions, I could have it generate a sales order for replacement. I could have it generate a return order to go back to the vendor. In this case, what it's essentially doing is putting that, generating the credit memo for the customer's account. So when I go through here, it's generating that credit memo. So now there will be a credit memo for that return of that one part on the customer's account.
Okay.
So it's not an.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
If we get a part back and we have to replace it, will it generate the paperwork to send it back?
So if you end up sending it back, so if you needed to do a replacement, I could say replace instead of credit. and it would generate the new sales order. Now I can do both. So let's say the customer wants a credit and I'm replacing it. It can generate a credit memo against the original invoice and create the sales order with an, for that replacement item. So you can tweak that to do different things, like just issue a credit or issue a credit and a return. So you can tweak that on a line-by-line basis to what you need to do for that customer. Do you need to credit the original invoice and then create another sales order and invoice that, the replacement part, or just create a credit memo against the original? So you can do different things on different line, different combinations of actions to do different things line by line.
Okay. So if we're going to replace it, but we want it to go to their original PO, we'll be able to generate another packing slip, and so we can ship it on another packing slip so we can keep track of it, correct?
So it would create the new sales order to get the replacement out the door, and then you would create, when you ship that replacement out, you would go through that shipping process, and it would generate the new, the shipping process for the replacement would generate the packing list for the replacement. And you can reference the RMA. So it would even have the RMA number, so you could reference the RMA number in that packing list too if you needed.
Cool. That's fantastic. That'll save us some problems. Now, it will not do anything with ISO 9000, right?
Not out of the box. So ISO 9000, again, that's more like having your procedures. So everything in Stage 100, so you'll notice like when I in Stage 100, you can't just like enter something and change it. If you need to change something, you have to do a reversing action. So you have audit trails for everything in the system. So in general, like I said, we don't have the ISO 9, like the ISO 9000 stamp of approval, but the structure is, it has everything that you need to be ISO 9000, if you will. We don't have that stamp of approval, but it has all the security and the audit profiles needed to be ISO 9000, if that makes sense.
How much?
That's a question.
Yeah, when we're setting all this up for users, how customizable is it as far as what someone can do and can't do?
So in Stage 100, it's on the role. So for what someone can do, you associate what a type of user, let's say a job someone performs. So let's say that they are accounting or just AP, or accounting does GLARAP, maybe sales, So what you would do is define the job that someone does in the system: sales rep, sysadmin, accounting, controller. You would assign a role or a job, what someone does, and then underneath that you would say what that user has access to, what modules. Under the module, you can say, what specific things they have access to do. Now, what's nice is you can give them access to everything in a module or specific things. Like maybe they just do AP check maintenance, vendor inquiry. Maybe they do 3 or 4 things. You can specify those 3 or 4 things that they're allowed to do. Another thing I want to point out, vendor maintenance is, if I give someone access to vendor maintenance, typically that is, I can create a new vendor. If there's a vendor that exists, for example, I could update how it's set up. I could change the term codes associated with a vendor or other details, so I could modify that record. Now, there's a delete button, but I can't just delete accidentally. If there's open invoices and balances for that vendor, I have to take care of those before I can hit delete. But what I want to do is, like right now, I have access to everything, but I could give someone access to maintenance, but let's say that new vendors have to be approved. Only certain users have the ability to approve a new vendor. So maybe for most users, I unchecked create. I could create a profile in which they're allowed to access vendor maintenance, but not allowed to create a new vendor. They would only be able to work with a new vendor, or maybe they're only allowed to view. So you can not only say they have access to maintenance, but you can say what types of things they can do while they're there, creating new ones, modifying existing ones, delete. So you can be very granular in this person is allowed to have access to vendor maintenance and they can do anything. This vendor can only modify an existing vendor. They're not allowed to create a new one from scratch. Questions?
That works. So
now, after the role is created, what you would then do is define your user and associate that user. So they would have a logon, their first name, last name, and then down here you can see this is where I can say the company and the role. So if you have just the one company, you would say, your company code and what security profile they have in that. If you end up with more than one company in the Sage 100 database, you can have all companies with the same profile or have, a specific security profile by company. Now this user code, the user code that gets associated with the user, that will follow the user. As they move throughout the system, if I create a new vendor, my user code is going to be associated with the creation of that vendor. If I create an order, purchase order, sales order, invoice, my user code is going to be associated with that. If I change the terms code on a customer, it can even capture what the terms code was before I changed it, what it was after that I did it, and the date and time that I changed that value.
Now, to set all this up, I have to come in here and they'll set it all up, but we're still going to have to be running Sage 50.
Correct.
So, are we going to run both of them side by side, or are we going to have a down period where everything's swapped, or what?
No, you'll run Sage 50 and 100 in tandem, while your 100 project's going on. And then the day you go live in 100, you're going to stop doing your transactions in Sage 50. And so there'll be a data migration of data over once the program's installed. And so all the training that you and your users are going to do, will be in your data. And that's kind of nice because you'll be familiar with certain things because it's your data. And then the night before you go live, there'll be one last data dump. And then the next day you'll flip the switch and go 100. So, and at that time, you'll need to let me know the day you go live so we can kill your subscription in Sage 50. It'll go dark, which means you can no longer, add or make edits to Sage 50, but you can still go into it and do historical lookups if you need to. And then we'll kill that subscription, and then you'll get a prorated refund on the monies you spent the previous year in that renewal based on the time you have left.
Okay, so we need to go ahead and pay our maintenance fee now?
Whenever it's due. I'm not sure when your renewal.
Fixing to do real quick.
Yeah, so you'll need to go ahead and pay that, and if your project is, 2 months or whatever it is, you get a prorated refund for the remaining, 10 months or the remaining 9 months of that money that you paid on that renewal.
Okay.
And that's why I had Ron on the call, but he had to jump off.
So we set this up and it's working, but we haven't put all of our stuff in there. I want to get the bill of materials in there before we go too far, so I can make sure all the bill of materials are right, or it won't go in there for whatever reason out of E2, because that has to be set up before we go any farther down the road.
Oh, yeah. Part of your project, your consultant's going to design those visual integrator templates for you with instructions on how to pull the data out of E2 and Sage 50. And at that point, once you get that data in the templates, that's a good time for you to clean it up, so to speak, because you want relevant data moving into 100, right? And so once that data is into 100, then then you're kind of off and running at that point, and you can do your training with all your data.
Right.
What I want you to think about too, Tim, is the number of users you're going to need in accounting and the number of users you're going to need in production. You'll have to segregate the two. So you may have, 7 users or 4 users in accounting versus 5 in production.
Well, I think right now the way the deal is, we're going to have 4 users.
Okay.
I will need both. Now, since Hannah does purchase orders, what else do you do?
Purchase orders, orders, and sometimes Christina in here at RMA too.
I don't know what all Hannah's going to have. I'm going to need both. Phyllis is going to need the accounting because I know it makes a difference on how much difference is the price if everybody had everything compared to, I got everything. Phyllis just has accounting. We have the fourth user would be accounting, and then Hannah, whatever she needs, would probably be both for her.
So it would be 4 in accounting and 4 in production?
No, just 2 production and 2 accounting.
You have to have a minimum of 3 in production.
Do you?
So you can have
Okay.
you can have 2 in accounting and 3 in production.
Okay.
Let's see what that would cost. Give me a sec.
That's going to be less the scheduling module, correct?
Correct. And we were doing payroll out of the system too, right?
All right.
We were doing payroll out of 100, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how many employees?
We're under 50.
Okay.
I think what is it? That, Phyllis, wouldn't you think we need to base it on 50 employees?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. How is it? Is it 50 active or 50 per year?
What it looks at, it takes a look at every payroll run that you do for every employee. So in account. So if you have an employee that you've done payroll for 2 months and they quit, they still count.
Yeah, she's saying 50.
No, ain't more than.
Oh, you need more than 50? How many do we need? 100? Or 75? Yeah, yeah. What increments does it come in?
Give me a second, I'll tell you.
Now, I know I wanted to show you one other thing here while you guys are talking. I'm going to open up a screen. There's another, all the reports that I showed you so far were with Crystal reports. Sage Intelligence Reporting is another tool you're going to have available. Report Manager is the tool. I already have it open down here. So this is where for financial reports, I know you were having trouble like the number of periods that you, so if I come here, instead of Crystal reports, this financial report tool is based on Excel. So it's a lot more easier to manipulate and work with and customize to meet your specific needs. So for example, I have Excel worksheet. There's links here to take you to more information like webcast tips and how to use it. But let's say if I want a balance sheet, I can just click balance sheet and it's going to generate the layout for me. Now, what's nice about this is the data is already connected. Excel is already connected to Sage 100. So it's not like you have to take your accounts and dump it out manually dump that into Sage, into Excel. It will pull it in. So I'm just going to update my fiscal period here. And notice that it pulls in the balances automatically. Because of Excel, my default view here is summarized, by category, assets, liability. But I can expand this now and see each individual account. And you see at the top, period 1, period 2, opening and closing balances by period. So you can manipulate if you have, periods that you want or don't want to include. This is the default, but I can say manage, and then I can say edit. And I can easily manipulate that to remove. So, I have my columns, my rows, and my spacers. So you can see, each, period 8. So if I want this somewhere else, all I have to do is drag and drop and move it. So it's very easy to use this tool to manipulate and change the format of that financial report to meet your specific needs. And what's nice about this can do things that Crystal reports can't do. So for example, if I right click here, I can right click, I have drill down. So I can drill down, and then even from here, I can drill down to see the transactional detail that made up that balance. So there's some nice features available in this reporting tool. And it's not limited. I mean, I can do trial balance, income statement, all that type of detail, balance sheet, all those are available here, but it's not limited to just financial reporting. I can also do dashboards and, kind of, expenses, top 5 items, top 5 customers, and even, let's say, show me sales from X date to X date, and it will break down, give me the total sales, average, highest, lowest, the top 10 items in that date range, the top 10 customers, sales reps, even how many customers were invoiced, customer with the highest sale, customer with the lowest sale, sales rep details, and then I can even come in and pick a specific day and get the sales dollar value for that specific day. So this is will all be available to you in Sage 100. Just want to make sure you saw that, because I know there were some questions about financial reporting during the call yesterday. So I wanted to make sure you saw that you would have
is so limited to what it'll do.
Yeah, and I during the call I sent everybody over the sample crystal reports, so that you get that with Sage 100, and then this is just an additional reporting tool called Sage Intelligence, and it's an Excel based reporting tool. You get that too.
Oh, I love that.
And then I'm going to share my screen real quick. And can you see this order form? Can you see this order form?
Yeah.
Okay. So with 2 licenses on the accounting side, and these are the modules, that you're getting. These are all the modules that John talked about and demoed today. We're not doing anything with CRM, and then we've got 3 down here for production management, and then for the payroll piece, these will be the tiers. So I have you up to 75 employees, and then the cost for that, and we're looking at an annual cost, would be $47.64.
Okay.
The only thing we need to do at this point is have another call with Ron, a scoping call, so he has an idea of what you're going to want out of your project, so he can price it accordingly. And that would be the cost to implement everything that you see here, with the exception of this module here, the production management module. I'll need Scanco to implement that piece, and so there will be a cost from Ron to implement everything but that, and then Scanco would implement this.
What happens if we find out that we need more than 75 employees? That might be enough, but it's going to be close.
Yeah, just call me and let me know you need to move up to the next tier. And it's a prorated amount that you pay to move up to that tier. And you just tell me, yeah, move forward with the transaction once it's quoted. We process the order, and then there's a new key, a tier key that's generated, and then you download that, and then that just moves you to the next tier. That usually just takes a day.
So we do this, they come in and set it up. How long does it take for them just to set it up and me go ahead and put in the bill of material and play with it, and then we start looking at doing the rest of it? But I know they got to come in and set it up, correct?
Well, they do it all remotely. I mean, if you do want somebody on site, that can happen. We can accommodate that. It's just an extra cost to do it.
Okay.
For the amount of users,
do as much as you want, right?
Yeah, for the amount of users that you have, I don't envision that you would need somebody on site to do any of that. But in terms of the length of the project, I mean, usually you drive that. I mean, it's based on resource availability. We're mindful that you have a business to run. So during the beginning, there's a project timeline that's set out. And there's meetings that are scheduled, and certain things happen on certain days. So we kind of stick to that. But you kind of control the speed as to which this happens. In the first initial meeting, you kind of tell your consultant when you want to go live, and then they'll kind of work backwards and schedule things to try and accommodate that go live date that you set.
Okay. But if we need somebody on site, you said it was what, $200 or $250 an hour?
I think Ron's rate is 150 per hour.
Okay.
There's additional cost for him to be on site. That would
Correct.
include a fee plus the airfare plus lodging plus meals.
Okay.
I'm not sure what his fee is. We can get that from him though. If you do need him on site though, yeah, it can be done.
Okay. I need you to go ahead and send me this.
Okay.
I'm going to go in there and talk to Jim, and then I'll let you know when we want to pull the trigger.
Okay. We'll need to have another call with Ron, so I'll get an email out to you, Tim, for your availability. This is probably like a 15-minute call, just so he can get the gist of what you're going to want out of your project to implement, so that way he can price it out accordingly. And that quote will come from him.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. But I'll send this out to you in hard copy. But check your email for the other stuff that I sent. I sent out those sample reports. I sent out a PDF of the cycle count, and you get 5 free licenses of that, which is some software that you can use on an Android device or an iOS, like an iPod Touch for cycle counts. And then I sent you out information on Starship for integrated shipping.
Oh, I got them.
Okay. Well, very good. If there's anything that we missed, just let me know. You can give me a call or just shoot me an email. But I'll get this quote over to you in hard copy. Give me about 10 minutes.
I appreciate you.
Okay. And I'll send you the recording of this session too.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. John, thanks for doing the demo.
You're very welcome.
Have a good day.
All right, everybody. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.